It might be mud season, but it's also the start of roadwork season, and now's the time to plan ahead for all the traffic you just won't be able to avoid this summer. 3 major projects are coming to Summit County between now and September. Repaving on Summit Boulevard through Frisco's business district, repaving on the east side of Interstate 70 between Vail Pass and Officers Gulch, and installing new avalanche mitigation cannons near Eisenhower Tunnel. The Summit Boulevard and I-70 projects are the biggest on CDOT's roster, and both are sorely needed. Tracy Truelove with CDOT stopped by the Krystal 93 studio to give us details on what to expect, what to avoid, and when lane closures will be the worst. Phil Lindeman, Krystal 93 News Director, in the studio today with Tracy Truelove. She's CDOT Communications Manager. Tracy, thanks for being in here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Phil.
Absolutely, and we are talking summer road projects because obviously anytime there's a road closed in the mountains, it means people got to look out for it and kind of change their plans a little. And CDOT has 3 major projects that'll be impacting Summit County. Let's talk a little bit about those, starting with some Highway 9 work.
Yes, so the Summit Boulevard Highway 9 project kicks off on Monday, and it starts with ADA, or Americans with a Disability Act, curb ramps that we're building out, so up to bringing them up to speed, if you will. And then we move into actually repaving Summit Boulevard. And the one good piece of information I can share with you about that is we'll be doing the paving at night starting in July.
Great. So it's not going to be impacting too much daytime traffic. It'll be relegated. What time will those be starting, night work?
That won't be until July that we start doing the paving work at night, but you will see single lane closures on Summit Boulevard. So it will be challenging because it's a very busy stretch of highway with a lot of business access.
Yeah, and like you said, ADA, bringing that area up to code, making it a little easier for folks to get around, especially foot traffic.
Yes, definitely. And speaking of foot traffic, we'll have pedestrian wayfinding for folks because, again, they're trying to access those restaurants and businesses. So we always make the commitment to keep access open.
Perfect. And how long is that project scheduled for? So it's starting on Monday, right here at the end of April, and it'll carry on through?
It's all the way through September.
Okay, so summer-long project. That one is kind of the big one then.
Yeah, there's just a lot of challenges too, again, in a section of highway like that with so many accesses, so it takes us a while. Now, it's important also to note, though, that during, I guess there's a big barbecue that happens in Frisco.
Yeah, Frisco barbecue, of course, in June.
Yes, and so what our team does is we see those events and we get off the road in enough time to start to welcome people, to Summit County without road work being the first thing they see.
Great, fantastic. So that is the big project there on Summit Boulevard through the heart of Frisco's kind of commerce district. What else is coming?
So we also have a pretty big resurfacing project on the east side of Vail Pass. So the summit of Vail down to Copper and through Officers Gulch. And again, the Officers Gulch section will be also night paving that will start in June.
All right. How long is that one expected to go, or when is it going to get started?
So that one's expected to start the first week in May, and then it too, though, will probably last into the end of summer.
For that, just general road maintenance, nothing special really going on with there, no changing or realignments or anything?
No, that'll still look the same configuration, but it's just a section of highway that gets beat up a lot, and so it's time for repaving.
Okay, great. And finally, the third project, there's one last big one that CDOT's taken over this summer.
Well, it's not even big from the sense that it'll have any impacts on traffic. In fact, it really won't. But we are going to start doing the some more avalanche mitigation build out near the Eisenhower Tunnel. So you could potentially see some work happening. I honestly don't think that work starts till later in the summer. But that's the other one I think that will be happening in this area.
All right. And what's the idea behind that one?
Well, we've had some great success with our GASX system on Loveland Pass, and so we're going to be doing some more of that type of system at Eisenhower Tunnel. We have a few slide paths there, and then also I believe that we're finishing Berthoud Pass with that project.
Yeah, and speaking of the I-70 corridor, anything else that folks who travel back and forth between here and Denver a lot are going to be keeping an eye out for?
I'm not really sure what Region 1 has. So Region 1 is east of Eisenhower Tunnel down, and I cover this side. But what I can assure people is if you go to our website, cotrip.org, we have our construction projects and lane closures scheduled there. So you can kind of make a plan for what you're, heading out into for travel.
Great. And CO Trip, that's updated constantly, every day, minute by minute even sometimes.
We do have some real-time updates, and then the lane closures happen every week. You know what's coming for construction the weekend ahead of you.
Perfect. That was probably about the last thing that I had for you, other than when it comes to tips for travelers, whether they live here in town or whether they're coming from out of town. How can they make sure the frustration level is staying low when these projects are going down? What can people be doing other than checking the website, checking those lane closures?
There's a couple other places to get information about what we are doing, which is we're pretty good on our Twitter feed as well as our Facebook page. The other thing I would suggest here in spring in Colorado, because we're seeing this still, is we're not quite done with winter here. Sometimes, as you know, living up in Summit County. And so just again, driving slow for the conditions. We encourage you to drive slow through our work zones because they're dynamic, and just for the safety of yourself as well as our workers, we have speed limits lowered so that that's a safer environment. So just really encourage people to take their time and enjoy the beautiful scenery here.
Great. And final thing I wanted to check up on was last summer, a lot of work was being done kind of north of town, up towards Silverthorne, some of those, the animal crossings and some of the wildlife crossings. All that work pretty much finished, or are there other phases to come?
No, we had a pretty big resurfacing project in your neck of the woods that was done last year, and the wildlife crossing project is complete. The nice thing about that project, we just saw the second year of a study that's monitoring the usage of those wildlife overpasses and underpasses, and we're seeing about almost a 90% decrease in wildlife animal vehicle collisions. So that project's really proven to be a great success for our state.
Yeah, particularly on that stretch, because I know that's why it was kind of targeted as a good spot for some of those crossings, was because there was so many accidents with trucks hitting animals and animals hitting trucks, because it's a long, kind of boring stretch sometimes, easy to lose track of what you're driving on.
Well, and the beauty of that project is we work closely with our partners at Colorado Parks and Wildlife to identify where these structures should go based on where animals were crossing. And we also did a lot of widening on that project, so it has just made it a much safer section of highway.
Perfect. Tracy Truelove with CDOT coming in to talk about summer road projects. Thanks again for making time, Tracy.
Great, Phil. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Phil Lindemann on Krystal 93.